Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome back to the Behind the Steel Curtain family of podcasts. My name is Bryan Anthony Davis. You could call me Bad, or for this show, you could call me by my BTSC nickname, Mr. 2AM. Of course, one of my many nicknames here, and it's one that I'm kind of particularly proud of and embarrassed of at the same time, because every once in a while I talk about tales of debauchery from the past, but really, this isn't what this show is about. It's just tales from me, Mr. 2AM. So that's why it's called Tales from 2AM. But it's a lot about my Steeler fandom and about everybody's Steeler fandom and some things they could link to the Steelers that aren't all on the gridiron. But it all comes back to what the Steelers mean to your life. And so today, I want to talk about a very important concept to me, and I'm going to get to that topic in just a moment. But first, I want to say hello to all of you that are checking in on the live chat. We see my good friend Brad Jewett is the first one here. Saying, "Ayo, Big E Bronco, a Broncos fan. We'll see you in week 2, my friend Big E." But a good friend of the show, Wes Hickok, says, "What's up, Bad? How's the family?" We're going to talk about that. I hope your family is doing well, and I hope all of you are doing well. We're going to talk about the BTSC family real quick. So this is the end of the first full week as far as our new format goes. We're doing the AM shows now with, if you haven't had a chance to check out Let's Ride. Who ride? We ride. Let's ride on 3. If you haven't had a chance to check out that with the Return E, Who Says You Can't Come Home, says Bon Jovi. And Jeff Hartman came back home, and he's doing that show on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. He did that all of last week. So, that's a great thing. So we're going to start mixing in other shows on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Steeler Retro Show is moving to Tuesday with myself and Tony Defio. And then Stat Geek is moving to Thursday AM as well. And our YouTube shows, we're cutting them in half. So you have a chance to download 2 throughout the day and break that up for your commute. But it's still going to be an hour on YouTube as well. And remember, you are BTSC families, a big part of it. So not only that, if you haven't had a chance to check out my good friend, the Canadian Wonder, Mr. Canada, Michael Beck, Canadian Bacon and Eggs Benedict. That's not the name of the show. The show is just like AC/DC, but Beck in Black. And gold, I guess. But that show on Wednesday, that's a fantastic show. Those guys together are absolutely incredible. Really good stuff. Then Michael getting his own solo show too with the live mic. It's something he's done in the past. And if you don't know this, you could even go check out on the BTSC family of podcast. You can go ahead and download it from April. One of his first guests in his first show with us was on the live mic when he just did it sparingly before we added it into the rotation. His first couple of shows, the first one was Chase Claypool, and the second one was Tuzar Skipper, and really good interviews, really good stuff. So check out all of that. Make sure that you're not just looking at our pretty faces, or in my case, pretty bad faces in YouTube, but check us out for the drive, because remember, it's so much safer to go ahead and put us on when you're mowing the lawn, like Dave Schofield does. Just listens to us on iTunes. Some of us. Stitcher and Spotify and anywhere you're gonna be able to download a podcast. That's the place to do it. So I see Sean Manahan in too, another part of our BTSC family. So it's really good to see all these people in here, and keep checking us out and keep telling your friends about it. It's really important that we keep growing. Really, really doing fantastic as far as the downloads go. And I want to mention you, and I want to lead you to the website too. If you are just watching us on here and you're not checking out behindthesteelcurtain.com, you don't know what you're missing. And apparently a lot of people are checking it out. I don't know if I'm supposed to break down that fourth wall and talk about rankings and statistics. I'm probably not supposed to. I'm going to do it anyways, because I just do what I want to do sometimes. But the number 1 NFL site in all of SB Nation yesterday, they have 32 NFL sites. The number 1 site, it's usually Philadelphia, sometimes Kansas City. It was Pittsburgh. It was Behind the Steel Curtain. So people were checking us out. Why are they checking us out? is because, you're getting breaking news. Those guys are at it. The editors, the co-editors, Dave Schofield and Jeff Hartman, they are on top of things. You're getting breaking news. You're getting great content from Jeffrey Benedict and great content from Michael Beck and Tony Defeo with the commentary, and Shannon White's in there doing his stuff. KT Smith, myself, every once in a while you'll see something from me too. So check all that out. But let's get down to brass tacks and let's talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers and some tales from 2 a.m. And I'm just going to do this because, I like to sing and you guys hate when I sing, but we're buddies. So we'll do this. And I know what the song was all about in 1997 when this song came out. Fantastic song by a great group. Rob Thomas wrote this, I believe. But I'm my own little takeoff. And if somebody has musical talent and wants to put a track down for me, we'll have to figure it out. But it's 2 a.m. I must be Bryan Anthony. So 2 a.m. stories. So let's talk about it. So the name of the show is Family First, but find room for the table for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So what I'm talking about here is a lot of us, I don't know if you're out there and you're married or if you're just a son or a daughter. You've heard me talk about on Father's Day, I did the show about my dad and how he introduced the Steelers to me and how it was a bonding thing. And how we do that, we try to do that with our kids. We get married, we try to do that with our wives or our husbands. It's a part of our world. Now, some people, they grow up and they get into that real world, and sometimes they put the things aside that they love. And that's something that happens. And, that's understandable. But my thing is making sure that you have room for what you love in your relationship, whether you love to crochet or you love to golf or you love to watch football or you love to go bird watching. Incorporate that with your family, and that makes it so much better. And that's something that's happened in the Bad House here too. So real quick, I'm just going to say we see just me. Dave Shipley's in here. Mr. and Mrs. Steelers ask. They ask Jeff is back. Yes, Jeff is back. The standard is still not in the rotation. When Lance left a couple of weeks back and quite amicably, and still a good friend of the show. We decided to go ahead and retire that with Lance. But so the Wednesday night show is now Beck in Black, and it's going to be Know Your Enemy coming up and when the regular season starts. And we're going to be talking about the upcoming game and talking more about the team that the Steelers are playing. So Mr. and Mrs. Steelers says, dang, I missed Jeff's return. That's a good thing about YouTube. And that's a good thing about the podcast platform where you can go and download it and you can listen to Jeff's return. So there you go. So Mr. and Mrs. and Mr. Steelers, that's hard coming off the tongue, but I love that because that name, Mrs. and Mr. Steeler, that ties into my show here and what I'm talking about, and tying everything into the Steelers. And my ADHD is really popping in because how I jump all over the place. But let me tell you a few things. So when I was growing up, it was a Sunday thing. We'd go to my grandmother's for dinner. My Italian grandmother, Nana, we called her, and we'd go to Nana's for dinner. Bunch of people there. It was the fall. Everybody's sitting there watching Steelers. And back then there were only 3 networks. Fox wasn't even around yet. Fox didn't come around until 86. So there was 3 networks and PBS, and that's the stuff you were watching. And that's how I got into pirate baseball too, I guess, because that was always on. So, you're watching it and it becomes a part of a family. It becomes a part of a gathering. It becomes a part of bonding with other people, and it's something to talk about, So when I started dating my wife, she wasn't my wife when I was dating her, of course, but when I started dating Jenny, and this was in a perfect Pittsburgh Steelers season. Some of you might have heard me tell this story before. It was in the 2005 season, and I was divorced. And So, and my divorce came really out of the blue. I mean, hit me like a sack of nickels. I mean, I didn't really see it coming. But then that's not to denigrate any other parties, because I have no ill will towards anybody, but I just didn't see this coming. And so I became an agent again, and one of the things that kept me going was the Steelers, and bonding with other people with the games, and doing all of that. So when I started dating her, she wanted to know a whole lot about me, and she knew right away that the Pittsburgh Steelers were a huge part of my life. This woman never watched football in her life, and this is 2005, and we all know what happened in 2005. Fast Willie Parker for 75 yards in that Super Bowl. The 3-game losing streak in November going into December. The 4-game winning streak. Bill Cowher's famous it's an 8-game season. Because it had to be an 8-game season. You had to win 4 straight and then win 4 more straight. Come to the playoffs, and they did just that. So here's the thing. When I officially started dating her, that 3-game streak that almost killed that season started. She thought I was going to break up with her. I mean, of course I wasn't going to break up with her, but she was superstitious. And we talked about that a little bit last week on the Superstition Show. But she was afraid that maybe I would be stupid enough to think that she was a jinx. And it wasn't. But so one thing that she did, she started watching the Steeler games on her own. And her family's like, what are you doing? You're watching football? You never watched football. Her dad was a little happy. He wasn't a Steeler fan. He was actually a fan of Washington. And but he was always very respectful to the Steelers. And I had a great opportunity to watch a lot of football with my father-in-law before he passed away a few years ago. And we always had that bond because we were the ones that watched football together then. It was great because no one else in the house did, Yeah, I married into a family with an English mother-in-law where football was soccer, I mean? So, and like soccer is so much better. Like, no. But I digress. So she started watching the games to get to know what she was watching. And then she fell in love with guys like Ben Roethlisberger and especially Hines Ward and Jerome Bettis and Troy Polamalu. And I'm going to get to those two guys, 43 and 86 in a minute. So, but I really want to talk about number 36. So things happened. They finally broke the jinx and they started winning. And when they won that game against the Chicago Bears in the snow, remember my good friend Brian Urlacher just got smacked and punished by Jerome Bettis. And she actually told me about it. She goes, yeah, I saw that where Jerome Bettis just knocked him over and kept on running in the snow. And she would also talk about the kickoff as the cool running up thing. And so I'm like, I've got a lot to teach you, but that's okay. So, and that's what we did. We taught her. And she just enjoyed the process. And the process basically was about how camaraderie and friendship and family comes along with the Steelers. So they win 3 straight after that. And so she was like, man, I didn't even know she was worried that I was going to break up with her. But when they won that 2nd game in a row against Minnesota right before Christmas, she was elated. And because things were going in the right direction. And so they win the 3rd game on Christmas Eve. That's the day when Debo took that dude. I have no clue what his name was because he was a fan in Cleveland. This sorry dude that just ran out on the field, picked him up by the neck and perfect body slam. And because he ran on the field, and the Steelers won like 45-0 on Christmas Eve in Cleveland. It was just amazing. So things were going great. So the last game of the season, they had to win to go to the playoffs, and they're playing the Detroit Lions. My buddy Doug, who had season tickets, says, hey, do you want tickets to the Steeler game on New Year's Day? I'm not going to go. In fact, we're having a party on New Year's Eve. Why don't you come on up And I said, well, yeah, I'll introduce you to my new girlfriend, and we'll come up. And so we went up to the party, and we got up early, and we drove to Pittsburgh the next day. And this was her first ever game. And I'll never forget, she's wearing this periwinkle jacket. I'm like, that looks close to Lions colors. And so I made sure I bought her for Christmas. I bought her some, back when they were doing a lot of the pink, I bought her the pink Steelers scarf and the hat. And something I think she still has today. I think my kids wear them now, but my daughter wears them. But so we go to the game, and one of her friends was going to be there too. And she goes, oh yeah, so-and-so, loves the Steelers. So we went talked to them, and she was teaching Jenny more about it. And we had really good seats in the end zone in the 225 level, I believe. And we're there, and everybody knew this was going to be Jerome Bettis' last game, And so they do the starting lineup, and Jerome really wasn't in the starting lineup because it was Willie Parker's show now. But it was still, Jerome was a huge part of it. And then, the PA announcer, and from Notre Dame, and the place went nuts. And here comes Bus coming out of the tunnel one last time, because you knew if they made the playoffs, they were going as a 6th seed, and he was not going to be playing in the stadium again because everybody knew he was gone. In fact, Hines and Ben had to convince him to come back after that AFC Championship loss in January of 2005. So he comes out, and she's like, oh, this is really cool. I know who that guy is and everything. And he had a pedestrian game. He had 54 yards rushing. And even though he had 54 yards rushing, he had one rushing touchdown early. He had another rushing touchdown. In the third, he had another rushing touchdown. And and they were all like 1-yard plunges. And actually not really a plunge when you're talking about the Bus, you're talking a 1-yard bullying. He's like, boom. So the Bus, Jerome gets in the end zone, and he's running on the sidelines. And there's a famous picture with taking the helmet and just putting it in the air, acknowledging the fans, because the fans are yelling, one more year, one more year, one more year. And I'm chanting, and we're going crazy. And I want to get her into it. And I was like, oh, she's not chanting. And I look over, and I see why she's not chanting. And she's crying. She is actually crying because of how these fans are pulling for this man in his last game. And at that very moment, I knew exactly that I was going to marry her. And I had been dating her a month, but I knew it at that point, and I did. So it was just one of those very special things. When we got married, out of the I had the terrible towel stuffed it when we did the whole garter pull down. I had in my jacket I had pulled out, so instead of the garter, I pulled out the terrible towel, waved it around just like an idiot. But everybody expected it. And there's a buddy of mine that I was just getting to know. Great Steeler fan from the Rochester area, Mike. And Mike's probably about 10 years older than I am. And I had never met his wife, and they came to my wedding. And I get choked up during these memories sometimes. And Mike is bringing this terrible towel to my wedding. And she's like, you can't take a terrible towel to a wedding. Cheryl, his wife, beautiful lady. And he said, now you don't understand where we're going. I could take a terrible towel to this wedding. You can't take it in the church. It's like, Catholic wedding. And he's like, oh yeah, we can. And so he brings the terrible towel, and the groom comes out from the side first, and I made sure I had my tux on. I just had this little decal inside my tux. I just did it subtly because I didn't want to be a clown, but I did it subtly. I just pulled it out real quick so everybody could see the hypocycloids. They could see it real quick, and you could hear a little giggle in the crowd. He looks at his wife and says, you see, I could bring the terrible towel. And she just laughed. And so that's that's what I'm talking about when you're talking about making room for the Pittsburgh Steelers, making room for the family, making room at the table for the Pittsburgh Steelers with a family. You can incorporate it. And there's so many more ways we're going to incorporate it. Now, I'm going to kind of, I warned my wife about this. And a lot of people, when I tell my 2 a.m. stories, they're like, good thing your wife's not listening. And I'm like, she knows all these stories. She knows all the crazy stories. She knows all the debauchery. She knows all the fun stories. I said, you might want to prepare a statement for what I'm going to talk about on Sunday, though. She's like, why? I said, well, because you might have to defend yourself. The one thing that she did, and she actually broke up with me once. And now the breakup lasted all of about 20 minutes, probably. And we were living about an hour apart. I was living in Frostburg, Maryland at the time. Where the Steelers used to actually practice right across the street against the Washington Redskins. The Redskins would actually do their practices there, and the Steelers would come up and do a game every year. But so I digress. But the reason she was just worried about some things, and she was worried about her crazy family, which isn't crazy at all. And, she was taking care of her grandmother at the time, and sometimes she had to cancel some stuff, and she just didn't want to expose me to that. But she broke up with me on the morning of the NFL draft. And I'm like, you don't break up with somebody on Christmas Day. And that's my Christmas Day. You can't break up with me on Christmas morning. It's the draft is today. We're going to get, I didn't know we were going to get Santonio Holmes, but it's just like, you almost ruined Santonio Holmes for me. You can't do that. But here's the thing about it. If I had to turn off that draft, or if it was Super Bowl Sunday and I had to turn off the Super Bowl and the Steelers in the Super Bowl to attend to my family, I would, because it's family first. The best part about it, though, the very best part about it, is my family would never ask that of me, because they know how important the Steelers are of me, and they incorporate it into our family life. So that's what makes it so special. So we'll be back right after this. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back, and we'll get to part 2 of Tales from 2 a.m. in just a moment. And we're back. We are back to Tales from 2 a.m. I am Bryan Anthony Davis on BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, the BTSC family of podcasts. Thanks for everybody joining us today. What we're talking about today is where the Pittsburgh Steelers fit in at your family table. So, and that's exactly what we're doing. So I had talked about how my wife, and my girlfriend at the time, back in 2006, how she actually broke up with me in the morning of the draft. And, I talked to her and I'm like, look, I am here with you. I'm taking all of you, I'm taking your family too, because this is who I want to be with. And so, that's the only time we broke up. And like I said, it was really just about 20-minute breakup. But the thing here is, you don't break up with somebody on the morning of the draft. And I kid her all the time. I'm like, but you broke up with me on draft day. And then I win every time. So that's the one thing. I said, hey, you can write a statement defending yourself, but I'm gonna bring that up. She's like, whatever. But so after that, we started our lives together, and one of her favorite things in the world, she actually worked at the Disney store, and she is a Disney fanatic. She's a Mickey Mouse fanatic and loves them. And so I found the perfect gift on eBay, and it was in a package. There's actually a Mickey Mouse bobblehead wearing a Steeler uniform. So it was perfect. And we still have that. And that's down in the Steeler room. And I got that for her as a symbol of us together, combining our loves for Mickey and the Steelers, and doing it together. And we actually got engaged at Disney World. And I had I had a ring made in Indiana, PA. My dad hooked me up with a guy to make a ring so it looked like mouse ears. I wanted to make it look like hypocycloids, but I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. But it looked like mouse ears, and we had a chance to be in the parade. And the cool thing about being in the parade is everybody's coming up to us because they heard you're the ones that got engaged. Those are the people that work there. So we're backstage or back or whatever you call it at Disney World waiting for the parade. And this is now they're in the 2006 season. So I'm wearing my Super Bowl champion sweatshirt. And we're riding through the parade and everybody's waving to us, and we're not Disney character, we're nobody, and we were just asked because we were engaged, and they always let families in, so it was our turn, and it was great, and we're waving through, and people were seeing me sweat. A lot of them are commenting on my sweatshirt, yelling at me and how awesome it was. Steelers, go Steelers, and yelling where they're from. And then one guy said, I'll never forget this, I'm from Cleveland, and flipped me the bird. And it was the greatest moment as far as, that guy was that passionate about being a Cleveland fan and seeing my Steelers Super Bowl champion sweatshirt that he gave me the finger at Disney World. It does not get better than that when it comes to being in that rivalry with the Steelers in Cleveland. I told you earlier I was going to talk about her love for Hines Ward and Troy Polamalu and Bettis. Those were her three favorites. And we decided before we got engaged that we were going to cohabitate and live together. And we thought we would get dachshunds together. We still have dachshunds. But the dachshunds that we got, they have both passed away. And oh man, Big Marv, what's goody? Big Marv in the house. Good to see you, my friend Dallas Quinley. I see him in there too. Asiatic Noble, nice to see you. If you're just coming in, we're talking about the Steelers and the family and making room for the Steelers at your family table. So we got these dachshunds together, a boy and a girl. And my role is, let me name the dogs. You're not going to let me name the kids, because when my nephew was born in 2006, my godson as well, who's a huge Steeler fan, Noah, shout out to my my buddy Noah, and 14 years old and huge Steelers fan. And that's our bond together too. It goes so many ways. There's so many ways to bond with the Steelers and family. And so we got these dogs, I digress. I was talking about Noah. So when Noah was born, I'm like trying to get my sister. I'm like, look, you got to name him Arthur Rooney Davis. And she wasn't married at the time. But she is now, but was not naming the kid Arthur. And I'm like, you got to name him Arthur. So I'm like, when we have kids, Arthur, and she's like, you're not naming the kid Arthur. I was trying to get Myron in there, but then my buddy who got me the tickets, Doug, he named his dog Myron. So, I couldn't name a dog Myron. So I'm like, I'm naming the dogs, and we got the dogs, these cute little girl and a boy. And she goes, it just doesn't look like an Arthur. I'm like, I'm like, all right, let's compromise on this. The girl we'll call Polamalu. So we'll call her Polly. The boy we'll call Hines Ward Davis. So it's really funny. Hines was they're both passed away now. We lost Hines last year, and we lost Polly the weekend of the AFC Championship game when the Steelers were playing New England in 2016. Absolutely broke my heart. I had a little picture of her watching the game with me because she always curled up and watched the game. And we taught the dogs. We taught the dogs every time they heard touchdown Steelers, they got a treat. So when we touchdown Steelers, the dogs would come running, and they were, it was pure Pavlovian, and it was awesome. And so the dogs were very much part of the family and very much a part of the Steeler way too. It was great. So Snowman's in the house. Hey, what's up, Snowman? Good to see you. So so Heinz, we have Heinz and Polly, and Heinz was a little maniac sometimes. He would just run around the yard. He'd get loose and he'd run down the street after other dogs. He was tough like Heinz. And he would, my gosh, one time Heinz jumped on the back of a golden retriever. The golden retrievers go rah, running around. Heinz is on his back, just holding on for dear life. It was hilarious. And my wife's there, Heinz Ward, get back here, Heinz Ward. Like the neighbors think she's crazy because she's yelling at Heinz Ward and no clue that's the dog's name, Heinz Ward. So just funny story I thought I'd throw in there too. Heinz and Polly, very much part of the family. So the kids, Connor was born in 2007 and Jillian was born in 2009. So here's a big thing about that. What's the first thing that happens when the kids are born? They, of course they clean them off and, they hand them to the family, and then you're figuring out what their name is. And because we didn't know what their names were, we wanted to wait till we saw them. We had some ideas. I did not get to name the kids. I mean, there was going to be a Ben. There was going to be, I'm like, hey, could we call this one Debo? Could we call this one Fast Willie? No, Brian. So anyways, one of the first things you do within the first day is you have their very first picture, and the hospital comes in, they take their official first picture. My wife had these outfits picked out for their first picture, and I'm like, all right, that's fine. I convinced the people at the hospital, I'm like, we get 2 pictures. They're like, what? I said, we get 2 first pictures because my wife has these outfits, but their official hospital picture has got to be draped in a terrible towel. And that's what we did. Their official baby pictures, they're draped in a terrible towel. My grandchildren, that's the same thing. Even if they're not Steeler fans, I'm making it happen. That's what I do. But so this was my very first child. Connor was now I do have a stepson. You can actually see him in that family picture in the background wearing the TJ Watt. He's married now. Very much a part of our family, a huge part of our family. He's my first son. So Stefan's my first son. But my firstborn to me was Connor, and he was born on August 4th. So he had a birthday last week. Happy birthday, 13, big 13. And August 5th was Mike Tomlin's first ever game as a coach. It was his first preseason game. They were playing in the Hall of Fame game. And I was wearing my San Antonio Holmes jersey. They're playing in this game. I'm watching in the hospital. They're getting some rest. And so we dressed up. We dressed up Connor in this little, we draped the towel on his bassinet there in the hospital bassinet. And I put a little jersey over him. I mean, he was swimming in it, but I put him on him. And so I'm watching the game, and this guy comes in to give him shots, and he's wearing Ravens sneakers. And I'm like, dude, Ravens sneakers? And he's like, yeah, I'm a Ravens fan, and gives the kid a shot. Connor starts crying, and he's a baby, he gets a shot. I mean, he's a day old. Why is this guy sticking me? And I said to him, look, hey, see, that's it. Ravens fans, you trust them. They'll make you cry, or they'll try to make you cry. Your first lesson of being a Steeler fan. Now, is my son the biggest sports fan? No, he's not a big sports fan at all. But he watches the game with us from time to time. And Jeff Hartman's kids do the same thing. They're really good at this too. They see a Ravens fan, they talk smack. My kids talk smack on Ravens fans and any fans the entire time. Yeah, Donald, you're right. It's a clear plastic tub on a cart. So you're absolutely correct. I mean, bassinet. I'm lucky. You're lucky I even know the word bassinet. So that's really funny. So Mark Firestorm, by the way, that's an awesome name. He says, laugh out loud. I'm in South Australia. It literally is 2 a.m. here right now. And you're partying with us. Tales from 2 a.m., Mark. Great. You know, we have great fans in Australia too. And so Donald's saying he likes the fact that I spruced up the name. I appreciate that, buddy. So, you know, that's the thing. You incorporate what you love into your family. You know, they're not huge into being Steeler fans, the kids, but they love Steeler Sunday. And that's fine. You know what? There's going to be a time that they are into it. And but we do Steeler Sunday every day game in the regular season. Night game, I go to my buddy Mike's house and we gather there. But if it's a day game, it's like a Super Bowl party every week. We plan a menu. We have all these from Western Pennsylvania here in Maryland, all these Steeler fans. And hey, Big E Bronco, if you were here, I'd invite you. I'd invite you in. There's just one rule. You come in, you could wear what you want. You could wear a Bronco jersey. You could wear a Ravens jersey. But the rule is, and it's my same rule as if you're in a stadium, anybody's allowed in my living room. You just can't pee on the couch. So you be respectful of the team you're watching, and you're not a jerk about it. And that's what it is. Now, I think it was Big Marv that mentioned that his wife's a Cowboys fan. So back in 1996, I was dating this woman when I was living in West Virginia, and I brought her home to meet my parents in Johnstown. And she was a Cowboys fan. And the Steelers and Cowboys were both playing in the playoffs that day. And the Cowboys were going to play later on playing the Panthers. And the Steelers were playing the Patriots in this horrible fog game, that 28-3 game that they lost. And at one point, they hand off the ball to Curtis Martin. Curtis Martin takes off for an 80-yard run. He's running down the field. Okay. This woman that I'm dating, she stands up and starts cheering. Woo! She's not a Patriots fan. She was just being a butthole. I mean, look, I'm sorry if you don't like the way I'm talking about her. She was just being a complete butt. All right. Just trying to tease me because my team was losing. Oh man, was I angry. My dad's looking at her as like, dude, he looks at me and goes, what are you doing here? I'm like, Dad, I don't know. I broke up with her a couple weeks later. I mean, I just couldn't get over. That wasn't the only reason I broke up with her. It's kind of the last straw. I'm like, all right, I'm kind of done here. She's not respecting my team, and she doesn't fit in. She's not making room for the Steelers at the table, you know, and that's it. I have no problem. I would marry a Ravens fan. I would have no problem if they were respectful of it. Now, my joke with my son, I've never told him this, but I always had this joke with my wife about my son, and you could probably see him in the background there. He's wearing the Juju jersey. When he was born, I'm like, look, he could be anybody he wants to be in this world. He can be born any way he wants in this world. If he comes to me when he's 16, 17 years old and says, Dad, I'm gay, I would say to him, son, I love you more than anything in this world. And I don't care who you are, you're a part of my family. But if he comes to me when he's 16 and says, Dad, I've thought about it, I'm a Ravens fan. Son, don't let the door hit you where the good Lord split you. Of course, you know I wouldn't do that. But that's the joke we always had. So, but I can actually marry a Ravens fan. I could marry a Bengals fan. I could marry just as long as you're respectful. I got to bring this one up in the board. It says, you got 2 wives in the pick bad? Actually, no, that's my daughter-in-law, Sydney, who's a Steelers fan. So that's the daughter-in-law, and whose birthday was last week as well, too. So shout out, happy birthday. I missed that in last week's show. So no, I only have one wife, And so I'm not going to put two wives in the picture, but that's really funny. Big Marv says, but she loves some players on our team. He's talking about his wife, who's a Cowboys fan. I'm going to switch her over to the Steelers. That's good. See, he's still trying. But Big Marv, I'm sure you're respectful of the Cowboys, and she's respectful of the Steelers, and it works. You could do that. Our good friend Marvin, I think his wife's a Saints fan, and he roots for the Saints for her too. If they're in the Super Bowl, I think the Saints she's on her own, but you can you can live with a fan of another team. You've just got to be respectful of that. X Eddie B saying my mom used to like Joe Flacco. Hey, you can't get on moms, but Joe Flacco, mom, come on. He's not elite. Mr. and Mrs. Steeler. Mrs. and Mr. Steeler. I keep messing that up. We have the same role. We love endlessly, except being a Steelers fan. That's so hysterical. Our gay teen knows where we draw the line. And the line is being a Steelers fan. And I respect that, because family's family. But you throw in the fact that you could, and you're going to accept your family. But family is going to make room for what you love, and you make room for what your family loves. I mean, I do some things with my kids that I go to places. My gosh, I've been to. I took my mom to a Clay Aiken concert, and people were like, and Jeff Hartman tried to take my Steeler. Jeff and Dave tried to take my Steeler card away from me, and I'm like, no, I'm proud of it. Take your mom to a Clay Aiken concert. She loves Clay Aiken. I'm going. It was a Christmas show, so it was cool. It was Christmas music. I loved it. And we waited backstage. I made sure my mom got outside the door so she could be the first to meet him when he gets out, because I got some intel that you can meet him. And he shook her hand and then ignored everybody else, all these screaming women and screaming girls, and shook my mom's hand and said hello to her. And you do stuff for your family. But when there's something you love, you incorporate it. And Steelers become a part of the family. Just like Disney has become a part of my family too. So Mrs. and Mr. Steeler, I love that. You know what? You love your son for who he is, but you got rules. We're a Steeler family. If he brings another team into the mix, if he brings in the Ravens or the Bengals, it's like you feel sorry for him, but you're like, okay, I'll respect it, as long as you respect our religion. That is, I call it Saint Myron sometime, which is far from Catholic, but or the Church of Rooney, Saint Rooney's. I mean, that's our religion at the house, and we embrace that. So many family stories. So what I want to do, and this is awesome. Snowman is our Robin Masters. That's what Tony and I call him. Great supporter of the show. I bought my mom front row Kenny Rogers tickets for a few years ago. I don't think that's a sacrifice though, Snowman, because I would have gone to Kenny Rogers for you. That would be with you. That's awesome. And may he rest in peace. That was one of those things my wife had to, my wife's like, yeah, did you hear the news when he passed away? And she had to break it to me. So that's the thing. And I tell the story all the time about how, I'm a big 80s music fan, and I know every song I know every number one song and the date of every number one song in the 1980s. And a lot of it was because I had between 1 and 2, I had to watch the start of the Steelers game, because most of the game started at 1 o'clock back in the 80s. And I had to listen to the top 10 of Casey Kasem's American Top 40, and Casey Kasem was my guy. So a lot of my childhood was two guys. Two guys that shaped my childhood were Chuck Noll, the Emperor, and Casey Kasem. Would you believe that they died on the same weekend, Father's Day weekend? In 2000, I mess this date up all the time, and the reason I mess this date up, because I'm suppressing it. I believe it was 2014. I kind of suppressed this it's like that episode of Different Strokes when Willis couldn't remember anything that happened in 1975. He couldn't remember the NBA champions. He couldn't remember anything because stuff that happened 75 because that's when his parents died. So when they died on the same weekend, not only did they die on a day apart on the same weekend, they died at age 82. They were 82 years old when they died. It's Father's Day weekend, and people were phoning the house and texting my wife saying, "Does Bryan know yet?" She goes, "No, he's we're about to do Father's Day gifts, and he doesn't know. He hasn't seen his phone yet. I've got to go break it to him." So, and that's but that's where family comes into play. They know what's important to you, and the things that are important get a place at your family table. And that's what the Steelers do. I think this is really funny. Ezra Nehemiah, another great contributor to the show. Benny Hill shaped my childhood. That's really funny. That's really funny. Benny Hill, he was classic. Big Marv is an 80s fan also. I'm serious. I can't do it on the show here, but because you could think I'm cheating, but I do this in person. I used to win dates. It drives my wife crazy, but I can take absolutely any date in the 1980s and off the top of my head tell you the day of the week and the number one song. So that's my thing. Yeah, Just Me confirmed that it was 2014. Man, I suppress that. That's something, and I will forget that again. I know it's right around there because it's something that I suppress. But here's the thing. Back to those two guys that shaped my childhood dying on the same day. What eased the entire thing was kids on my lap bringing me gifts for Father's Day and the love of a family. And knowing that I was hurting because celebrities that I never met that kind of shaped my childhood passed away. And they were trying to make me feel better about it. And, it didn't hurt as much. So, hey, family Steeler stories. I want to hear them. Snowman says, I was working a 12-hour shift, so I couldn't go. So I asked my big sister to take my mom. They gave my sister enough money to take my mom to dinner and buy her a T-shirt. And that was the Kenny Rogers concert that it's talking about. Man, you probably missed a great show because Kenny was great. But I want to hear some fun Steeler stories, some family Steeler stories. I want to talk about the show This Is Us. I'm sure some of you watch it. Some of you probably don't. And wonderful show. It's going to tug at the heartstrings. The very first episode, the very first scene, it's the guy's birthday and he's wearing nothing but a terrible towel because that was his wife's gift to him for his birthday. And then they show later on in the season how she purchased the terrible towel for him because it was set in Pittsburgh. They conceived the kids at Froggy's, which was a real Pittsburgh bar. And they conceived the triplets. And I don't want to give away too much of the show if you've never watched it because it's a really good show. They conceived them in the bathroom at Froggy's during halftime of Super Bowl 14, where the Steelers beat the Rams. So it's a very Steeler-centric show. So there was an episode where she was talking to this guy she was dating. He said, she's like, I'm watching the game with my dad. I can't go out with you tonight. Or it was going to be their first date. I'm watching the game with my dad. Well, can I come over and watch the game with you? And she goes, no, that's kind of our thing. And he kind of forced his way in. And then she kind of kicked him out because he wasn't really paying attention to the game. And that was her time with her dad. And her dad had passed away and the urns on the couch with her. And that's what she did, and that was to make sure her father watched the game after he passed away. And I've asked my daughter, she's only 11. I've asked her a couple of years ago when I saw that, hey, would you do that for me? And probably scared her, but she agreed to do that someday so I could watch the Steelers. Mrs. and Mr. Steelers, we have saved every jersey we bought for our babies from birth. And when they move out, we are making a blanket out of them. Oh, wow, that's awesome. Ezra Nehemiah says, my sister is a Ravens fan. We watched the Immaculate Extension together. What a sweet moment. And that was Christmas Day. So that's really cool. And, you probably have that rivalry, but it's still Christmas. And the thing is, the Steelers and Ravens aren't going to pull you apart. I joked about that thing earlier about, if my son wanted to be a Ravens fan, but they're not going to pull you apart, but you have that fun rivalry. But when it comes down to it, it's your bond with your sister that can't be broken. The laundry that you wear, the team that you root for, the culture that you have, that can coexist as long as there's room at the table for the Steelers. And really, there's got to be room at the table for the Ravens too when your sister's there, because it's a rivalry, it's fun. And that was a bittersweet day for me, because that's the day George Michael died. And it was my wife was a huge George Michael fan, and me being an 80s guy, that kind of was kind of sad. We have a super chat from Dave Shipley, $20 super chat. So thank you very much for your hardworking money. We really appreciate it. My wife started whacking people, and we won Jacksonville with the terrible towel in 2003. She was whacking people with the terrible towel. That's hilarious. Security had to stop in and settle everything down. I knew she was a keeper. 17 years later, go Steelers. Mrs. Dave Shipley. You're whacking people with a terrible towel. Was it in Jacksonville? That's even better. Dave, you've got to follow up with that. I got to know if that was in Jacksonville. My wife and I went to a Steelers game in Jacksonville about 6 years ago. It was 2014 as well. And it was 75% Steeler fans. And it was pretty amazing. Wes says, my daughter, 5 years old, she doesn't really understand sports, but she's all about watching football and wearing a Steeler jersey with her pops. Man, that's what it's out. You cherish that, like Dave Shipley says, Wes, you cherish that. And that's it. And my kids wear Steelers stuff all the time, and they know what it means. And even though they're not fans, they'll go talk smack. Snowman says he works with a couple. He's a Giants fan. She's a Cowboys fan. How's that work? But, as long as there's room at the table. So, Sean Manahan says, don't let your wife hear you say you could marry a Ravens fan. No, I married a Marylander, but not a Ravens fan. Big Marv's dog has a Steeler collar. That's really cool. Donald Nolan, bad trivia question. Can you name all the players that caught a pass for the Steelers last year? I tell you what, I won't look that up, but we'll go ahead and put that on the Tony and I will do that tomorrow. So I will not look that up, and I won't even think about that. And let's do that tomorrow, because I like that. Or maybe I look it up and we try to get Tony on that. That's a good one on the Q&A. And remember, the retro show will be the next day too. So Sean Manahan says, my mother took me to my first Steeler game in Tampa in 2001. I remember that game. So I was there and watched Jerome Bettis dominate the paper champs in person with my terrible towel. And if I'm not mistaken, he threw a touchdown pass that game, Sean. I'm pretty sure he did. Wes says, I forget what year it was, but I'm sure someone will know. We had just lost to the Bengals, which eliminated us from the playoffs. I was furious and told my wife I wasn't even watching the last game. That might be 2003. I'm actually, if that's possible, could that be 2003? Or I'm not sure. Yeah, they didn't miss the playoffs that much. So probably either 2003 or 2006, maybe. Wes Hickok again, August, Cleveland, December 31st. Little did I know my wife bought me tickets to the game. Turned out to be a great time. That's awesome. Donald here. I was working at Dino's Bar and Wings in Latrobe when Steelers won Super Bowl in 2005. It was almost like being at the game. Place was packed to the brim with nothing but Steeler fans. Best memory I have. Steelers are supposed to be a fantasy. Being a football fan, it's supposed to be a fantasy world, and it's supposed to be an escape. So that's really cool, and you'll remember that, and I'm gonna remember those moments with dancing with the kids when the Steelers won. Probably one of my I'm gonna wrap it up because we're closing in on an hour, but probably I'm gonna save the last great memory for the end. Marcus Nash, I love this. 3 of my 4 kids were born in Steelers Super Bowl years, 1995, 05, and 08. Tell you what, if there's time, the 5th kid, and see if we can get them in a Super Bowl year here in 2020. I mean, it could be right after the Super Bowl. How about that? My daughter, we were pregnant with my daughter in a Super Bowl year, so that's special. Chandler Brown, me and my mom went to a Steelers-Panthers game in 14. Panthers fans had white towels, and we were waving our terrible towels, and fans started whacking us with their towels, and security had to step in. Caught your show last week. I just lost that. But where was that? Andrew Wilbar caught your guys' show last week at the end. At least good show, bad. I appreciate that, Andrew Wilbar. Thank you very much. Hey, if you missed these shows, you can go back and watch on YouTube. That's something we appreciate. Yeah, X Eddie B is trying to get Mr. Nash to make more babies so we can win the Super Bowl. So who has it? Dave Shipley says, if they're in Florida, let me know. I got luxury box in all 3. Let me know. Hey, I'll come down to a game again. I would love to do that. Awesome. Next time the Steelers are playing, and I'm calling you up, Dave. My wife loves Florida too. Ezra says, in 2015, I went to Cincy for the playoff game. I had VIP passes and snuck into the Bengals locker room and took a picture while standing on the Bengals logo. That picture will definitely be my funeral pic. I love it. Sean says, my wife was pregnant with my son during the Super Bowl in 08. Same with my daughter. The night they won the Super Bowl, she had to stay that night in the hospital. Wow. Oh, so during the Super Bowl. Wow, that's a gift. That's a better gift than the Lombardi. So that's really awesome. So I only have about 2 more minutes. I want to tell you my last story. So a lot of people hear me talk about this, and I probably talk about it too much. But in 2003, I was diagnosed with testicular cancer, and something I caught really quick, and something I was able to take care of. But there was a question of whether I could have children, and they told me because you didn't have radiation. I went to Johns Hopkins. And they're like, you didn't freeze, so you might not be able to have children, but since you're not having radiation, you should probably be okay. And it might be a lot of work to have kids too. And I'm like, I have no problem doing that. But I definitely want to have children. And ironically, I had taken the test right before, and I got the results. I just wanted to know. And I had taken the test and I found out that I was actually able to conceive, but it would be a lot of hard work. The results came the day of my first date with my wife. And so that was something good to know. That's something you don't tell her on her first date. But so, with the cancer, not sure if I would ever be able to conceive. And the cancer happened the year of my divorce too. So a lot of weird stuff going on in my life, and ended up being the best year of my life because I found out a lot about myself. So to make a long story short, it's Thanksgiving weekend and my wife wasn't feeling well. And 2006, she wasn't feeling that well during Thanksgiving and everything. And I'm watching the Steelers with Polly, my dog, Palomolo, and watching downstairs in my basement, and they lose like 27-0 to the Ravens. And it's the first half, and I was so mad. I had all the Steeler Super Bowl bobbleheads, and I turned them around. I said, I don't want to look at you guys right now. I'm mad at you guys because you're playing awful. Why I'm talking to bobbleheads, I don't know. So I turned them around, and she comes walking down the steps, and I'm there watching the game by myself in in Steeler Central, what I call it. She comes down and says, "Hey, can I talk to you?" And I'm like, "Yeah." She goes, "Everything okay?" I'm like, Steelers suck today. I mean, they're awful. The Ravens are beating them. Bart Scott just bloodied Ben Roethlisberger's nose. I'm really mad. I'm so mad at him. And she saw the bobbleheads. And she goes, "You turned the bobbleheads around?" I'm like, "Yeah." She goes, she starts to laugh. She's like, "Okay, I'll come back later." I'm like, "No, what do you need?" And she pulls out the stick. And at that moment, I found out that I was going to be a father for the first time. And that's 27-0 didn't mean anything anymore, And I knew, I was like, this is awesome. And it took the sting out of them losing. The game didn't even matter. In fact, I don't even know if I watched the rest of the game. I was so excited. But I knew I was going to have a little Steeler fan. I knew I was going to add to my family. And there was going to be room for all of us at the table. And greatest day of my life. And the Steelers lost 27-0. And it didn't matter because family comes first. But you always make room at the table for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm Bryan Anthony Davis. You could call me bad. You call me 2 a.m. This has been Tales from 2 a.m. I'm so glad my Steeler family, my BTSC family, all of you on this screen is here with me today. So thank you so much. We're all Steeler family together. You guys are the best. See you tomorrow night and check us out on all of the BTSC family of podcasts. I love you, BTSC Nation. I'll talk to you next time.